This is WCN, the Whole Care Network. You talk, we listen. Content presented on the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent views of the Whole Care Network. Always consult your physician for medical and fitness advice, and always consult your attorney for legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Have you ever met anybody that has caregiving on their bucket list of things to do in life?
Beyond caregiving, how do we care?
We also have to care for ourselves.
How do we treat friends, family, strangers we meet?
Forget it.
How do we heal? The physical, social, financial, spiritual.
Hello.
By creating healing ties. Tying it all together like a bow tie. With your host, Christopher McClellan, the bow tie guy.
Well, greetings, everyone. It is Christopher McClellan, the bow tie guy, and welcome to another episode of Healing Ties 2.0 featured on the Whole Care Network. On the Whole Care Network, we are all about story sharing and resources because we believe it's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. And our common cause is supporting caregivers before, during, and after caregiving ends. And as you know, we're celebrating National Family Caregivers Month with the reboot of the popular Healing Ties podcast. Well, I think it's popular, with our 30 podcast in 30 days and the soft launch of our new Whole Care Network website. So when you get a chance, please visit our new site at wholecarenetwork.com. Well, you got to go to the old site to get to the new site, but you'll see the link to the new site. Yeah, you'll figure it out when you get to the site. But when you get to the new site, you're going to meet a fellow by the name of Bo. That's because Bo ties things together on the Whole Care Network. You'll definitely get it when you see a picture of Bo. And during our soft launch, we're asking all of our listeners to provide us with feedback on the new site so we can continue to build our site where you can easily find your favorite podcasts, favorite blogs, and videos. And by the way, you'll be able to search content on the Whole Care Network via our 4 pillars of care: physical, social, financial, and spiritual health. And be on the lookout for our new YouTube channel featuring live shows, our streaming 24/7 radio station, and a few other exciting changes coming to the Whole Care Network in 2021. Well, enough from me. My guest today, I've just been looking forward to this because this is somebody that I think very highly of, is my good friend Rich Scharf. Rich is a native West Virginian living in St. Louis, only child raised by a single mother, Carolyn, who resides in a memory care facility with mid to late stage dementia. Rich is a former member singer at the Gateway Men's Chorus, where I knew him best, and I'm going to embarrass him right off the top. He is one of the best voices I have ever heard. Rich, it's great to have you on the Healing Ties. It's great to be with you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for blowing smoke up my skirt. I appreciate the compliment.
Well, and I just remember all your solos, and I just always wanted a voice like yours. But now I got you on as a guest. That's even better.
There you go. Well, yeah. I also have very fond memories of you, Chris. And I remember when we ran into each other in Florida a few years ago. That was a delight.
That was a delight. It was quite it's always a delight to be in your company, Rich. Well, I know a whole lot about you, but tell our listeners a little bit about you, and we'll get into conversation about you and your mom and long-distance caregiving.
Sure. Well, as you said, I'm a native West Virginian. I grew up in Charleston, West Virginia. I attended West Virginia University, which was the best 10 years of my life.
The 10-year plan?
Yeah. Well, that's not true. Well, the 10 years is true, but the best years of my life is not, because I really feel like I'm living my best years right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in college for a long time. I went to undergraduate and dental school. I am a dentist. I'm an associate dental director at a local federally qualified health center here in St. Louis, which serves the underserved, people who normally would not be able to afford medical, dental, behavioral health care.
That is awesome work that you're doing for the underprivileged.
It is. And it's been a challenge this year with the pandemic. We certainly had to go through a lot of changes.
How does dentistry work in the middle of, I had not thought about that. So good.
So come March the 16th, when we realized things were really getting serious, the ADA, the American Dental Association, recommended that dental offices shut down except for emergency treatment. The fear was that the oral aerosolization that would be created by working in the mouth, especially using high-speed drills, would be a vector for easy infection.
Mm-hmm.
And so from the mid-March to the end of May, we only saw emergency treatment. Most of those were tooth extractions, which do not cause the oral aerosols.
Oh, okay.
But starting June the 1st, we started seeing more patients, and we're about 70 to 75% capacity of what we were pre-pandemic. So we're not as busy as we used to be, in an attempt to still keep a whole bunch of people from being in the building at the same time.
That's amazing. I just never would have thought of, because but it makes sense that would be an issue that we'd want to be careful about.
Well, I tell you what, dental offices have always been very high on sterilization.
Yes.
We've always worn a mask and gloves and safety glasses. To that, we've added an additional mask. We wear an N95 mask underneath a surgical mask. And we also use a face shield, just very, very cognizant of the sterilization that we need to do. What I will say, so when we started seeing more patients in June, we were a little concerned.
Mm-hmm.
How much at risk are we going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And there has been no COVID infection within the dental office.
That's awesome.
In the last 8 months.
That is a testament to your dedication and your whole staff. Now we talked earlier when I opened the show about your mom. Now I remember meeting your mom.
She came for a concert.
She came for a concert. Yeah.
Oh, that would have been 2009.
2000. Oh, we're dating ourselves, but 2000. But I do remember it was at the I think the Edison Theater at Washington.
I think you're right.
I think yeah. Right. And she was so pleasant, so proud of you. And now you're kind of on a little caregiving journey with her.
Yes, which was unexpected. My mother has always been very, very independent, very self-sufficient, very savvy. And to see her lose her mental skills has been an adjustment. This is so funny. I was just thinking about this today. I've kept a journal for years and years.
Oh, very good.
I was reading a journal from 2008. And in it, I had written that I had called her and I said, well, how are you? And she goes, oh, well, she calls me Rick. My family has always called me Rick instead of Rich. So she goes, Rick, I need a colostomy. I was like, you do? Oh my God. She goes, yes, I have to go to the hospital Friday morning and they say I'll be home by lunch. And I'm like, do you mean a colonoscopy? And what she said to me was, oh, Rick, my brain's not working anymore. And so I'm wondering if even then she was starting to notice, not being able to think of certain words or some of the same things I do today. So, you know what I mean? It's a little fear of God in you.
Yeah, I think, we've been dealing with that with one of my sisters. And it's kind of a slow process. You think at the beginning they kind of recognize it, but then it just kind of moves on. But, for you, you're living in St. Louis and she's in West Virginia. That long distance caregiving in and of itself is not easy, but when it's long distance, it presents its own little challenges.
Sure. Things came to a head about 5 years ago, and we started to realize that she didn't have the mental faculties that she used to have. She got very confused about doing her taxes. And she'd always not only done her own taxes, but worked part-time during tax season at a local tax office.
Oh, okay.
So, and she always did. She was a legal secretary for the same lawyer for 51 years until she retired.
Goodness.
And she did his taxes. She did his daughter's taxes, who's also a lawyer at the firm. So she was very savvy around this. So around 2015, she was getting very confused about her taxes. And this is when we started to notice that there was something happening. The other thing I'll say about my mother is she's been a member of a church since I've been a teenager. And she has been very active in that church. It's called United Disciples of Christ Church. Disciples of Christ is the denomination. They're very progressive. And just, if I went to church, that would be the type of church I would go to. I just have great, great respect for that church. And they've become her family. And so what I'll say about long distance care, the fact that she was a member of this church for years is helping her now, because they really helped to take care of her, especially her one church friend, Betty. If it wasn't for Betty, I probably would have to move on home and be more hands-on. But she's just helped out a lot.
Oh, that is, and that's what, well, I don't want to digress into church, but that's what church is supposed to be about, helping helping the family, helping the community. That's
absolutely.
We could go off on a tangent on churches, but I'm glad I hear a good story about churches today.
Oh, so, I would sing this church's praises to high heaven.
Yeah. And for you, I would imagine you get back, every so often, but
I do.
Was it hard to see the changes when you go back? Went back? Yeah.
It was. There, and I won't go into a lot of the details, but there was a precipitating crisis about 5 years ago. And I came home and she was in the hospital. And so the lawyer that she works for, her daughter, Susie, is like a sister to me. And Susie was very helpful in telling me, here's the deal. You should try to be power of attorney. You should try to become co-owner of her checking account.
Right.
In her retirement account, I had no idea she had a retirement account. Thank God my mother was self-sufficient and had a decent nest egg in retirement. And so I always say I got her when she was down, because she was very frail and fatigued in the hospital. But I think she recognized that things needed to change. And so she signed the power of attorney documentation. She went with me to the bank so I could become co-owner of her checking account. And we went to the CPA office where she has her retirement account and took care of that. And from then on, man, I'm someone who bounced checks in college. So and even after college, I hate to say. So for me to all of a sudden be managing her finances has been a big adjustment for me, but easier than I thought it would be. And thank God she had that retirement account.
Well, and thank goodness you had that great advice to start that process, because especially in her condition, it would have gotten harder. To make those changes, which are so critical, and that's kind of across the board with that I find with caregivers, that we don't often have that conversation about the business side of it that needs to be taken care of. But once it's finished, then you can move on and deal with the day-to-day care, which you've done. So that's
exactly right.
Yeah, and I also know, because I've so enjoyed your personality when we were at the chorus, that you've got some funny stories that you'd like to share too.
So one funny story, and it's going to have a bit of a political edge to it. So that's my apologies ahead of time.
That's perfectly okay.
But my mother has always had a big, liberal, progressive, compassionate heart. And this would be 3 years ago. It was before she went into assisted living. And I took her to her neurologist appointment that July, so this would have been 2017. And they gave her whatever the cognitive test is called, where they ask you that series of questions. And of course, the first question they ask is, and her name is Carolyn. Well, Carolyn, what year is it? You hear my West Virginia twang come out because I'm imitating the nurse. What year is it? And my mom would go, 2017. That's good, Carolyn. Now, what month is it? It's July. Well, what's the season? It's July. Well, that's the month. What's the season? Well, it's hot. Now, who is our current president? And her face screwed up into the most disgusted expression you could imagine. And she just started going, oh, no. So she could not remember Trump's name, but she could remember that she loathed him. And I just thought, oh, good for you, Mom.
What a great story.
Oh, gosh.
Because, with caregiving and caregivers, it really is all about stories and story sharing, because that's where we find the comfort. And that's, part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is, sharing stories and resources, because we find out that when we do, we're really not that much different.
Mm-hmm. It was at that point that my mother, we got her to go into assisted living. It was not an easy transition. She resisted it with every ounce of her being.
Right.
And then in January of this year, she moved into memory care.
Moving to memory care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a steady progression, but you're being a great son by being there by her side.
I am. You know what? I have to kind of put aside sometimes the guilt that I feel. Well, I should just move back home and I should just be there. I am not sure she would be any better taken care of if I lived there.
Right.
Luckily, she did have this retirement nest egg, so that pays for the assisted living and now the memory care. And of course, the thing is this year, once the pandemic hit, I've only been home once, and that was in September.
Yeah, and it's been hard to even get into any of these senior living centers. I know each state has different rules and regulations, but it's been tough for everybody that has a loved one in one of these communities. So, goodness.
And here's the deal about that with me. This assisted living facility has only had one resident test positive for COVID, and that was back in the beginning of the pandemic. So even though I'm frustrated I can't see my mother in person, that's outweighed by the fact that she remains physically, COVID free.
She's in good hands.
So whatever they need to do, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little disappointed. I actually had an in-person visit scheduled with her over Labor Day weekend. And of course, the infection rates rose that week in her county. And then they had to say no in-person visits. So I talked to her through a window.
Oh, goodness. You should, some of the podcast guests we've had on podcasts here recently, with some of the technology that's going on with hearing devices and being able to talk with residents. And it's been amazing what we've uncovered here in the last month or so as we've restarted the podcast. We'll send you some of that information as well about how these tech companies are. It's like, I barely know how to turn the computer on, and these guys are making it easy for seniors and their families to hear each other in these communities. It's right. Awesome.
I've had a couple of FaceTime visits with my mother, so they are handling that at her assisted living facility. They have a way now that they can put the image on the TV, and they seem to think that the people in memory care respond better to seeing the picture on TV.
Seeing the picture on the TV.
Rather than looking down at a little screen.
Because that's something that they're used to. I get that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Technology is definitely changing our lives. There's no doubt about that. So Rich, I think this is a great time for us to take our break. And, as I'm doing with all of our guests on our 30 and 30 reboot of Healing Ties, I want to know one fun fact about you that I don't know, and I know that our listeners are going to want to know. So got to put your thinking cap on.
Well, I'm not sure if the listeners would need to know this, but
well, we're gonna hurry back. We're gonna hurry back to find out. So.
All right.
So you're listening to Healing Ties on the Whole Care Network. We'll be right back.
Tomorrow on Healing Ties 2.0.
We always say you can't pour from an empty cup. So we, as caregivers, we really, really have to care for ourselves. I'm a caregiver. I have a son with disabilities, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that respite really sort of saved our family. Hi, I'm Megan Schwam, Executive Director of the Tennessee Respite Coalition. Join us tomorrow to hear my conversation about respite care in Tennessee.
Join us tomorrow and every day in November for 30 shows in 30 days. Healing Ties 2.0. Available at thewholecarenetwork.com/Healing Ties and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I am continuing my delightful conversation with my good friend and family caregiver and a dentist as well, Rich Scharf. So, Rich, we want to know. Spill the beans. We want to know a fun fact about you that I don't know, that all of our listeners are just sitting at the edge of their seats wanting to know.
Well, I'm glad you said fun fact and not scandalous fact.
Well, we could, I know the editor, I know the producer here. We could certainly change that.
So here's a fun fact that not many people know about me. I am a huge comic book nerd. I love the Marvel movies. I love the Marvel TV shows. As a child growing up, I was an only child. I had awkward social skills. I was teased and bullied a lot. So I really was on my own. And comic books were just like a nice retreat from harsh reality. And I got made fun of for reading comic books. So I always kind of kept it in the closet. I was on the down low. Well, about 12 years ago, the Marvel movies started coming out and they became popular. And I'm like, well, I can come out of the closet as a comic book fan.
There you go.
I started to buy comic books again. And for me, it's just like a nice reconnection to my childhood. So
that is something I did not know. And what's great about this, and this is so unplanned, the guest that was on previous to you, he had the same fun fact about comic books. And he has a whole bookstore in Tampa that when you come to Florida, we're going to his bookstore in Tampa.
Oh, I would love to.
He's got, it's one of the great, I know this is your fun fact, but he's got one of the greatest assortments of old comic books that you'd ever.
Oh my gosh.
So we have to put that on our things to do. Next time you're in Florida,
I would love it. And I am the comic book company's ideal adult customer with discretionary income because I don't have any of the comic books that I bought when I was a kid. And now I'm buying them back in these gorgeous bound volumes that are not cheap.
They're not cheap. They've tapped into us kids who are in our 50s and 60s.
Right.
Yeah. So are you doing any more singing? Are you doing any more acting? What's on your
I am not doing any more singing. My schedule became such that it was just hard for me to continue. Yeah. It was hard for me to continue going to Monday night rehearsals because I work. Mondays are always sometimes our busiest day at work. Mm-hmm. And then Tuesday we work a long day. Mm-hmm. And so Mondays and Tuesdays were just starting to wear me out. So I don't sing anymore. I miss it. I do remember that singing, there were some times where I would go to rehearsal and I was heartbroken or I was mad or something was going on in my life that I just couldn't handle. And I'm like, last thing I want to do is go and sing for 3 hours. And I still would go. And halfway through rehearsal, I would realize I had not thought about anything except singing. So it's a very centering, present, spiritual thing to do. And I do miss that. A couple of years ago, I've done a lot of acting work with that Uppity Theater Company, General Company. Mm-hmm. And a couple of years ago, they've done it several years and they haven't done it now for a couple of years, but it's called Briefs and it's short LGBTQ themed.
Oh yeah. I've seen Briefs. Yeah. It's so good. Mm-hmm.
I've been in three of their 6 productions, I think. Mm-hmm. And so the last one was a couple of years ago. That was great fun. It was also for someone who likes their free time now, a limited commitment. Instead of doing a 2-hour play with weeks of rehearsal, we met like maybe once a week for a few weeks, and then we were up and running with a 10-minute play.
Yeah, it is a fun play to be involved in and to watch as well. So, well, maybe you'll get back to doing that. So
maybe I will, but when we can all be in the same room again.
When we can all be in the same room again.
Oh, you know what? I just remembered this. Last year, she did a staged reading of the Mueller Report. And it had singing so I did sing for that, actually. And Bill was the little choir director for our little singing sessions for that. So that was a lot of fun. So that's
little choir director? Little choir director?
Well, we were a little choir.
We were a little choir. Got it. Okay. So Richard, just have a couple of minutes left. I've just, again, so delighted to reconnect with you. And I appreciate you sharing your story for our listeners. And you have a standing invitation to have your own podcast when you're ready on the Whole Care Network.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And Rich, with the stories you share and the work that you do, you're certainly someone who's creating healing ties all around us today. I just can't thank you enough for being here.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, well, that does it for this episode of Healing Ties. As you know, I'm your host, Christopher McClellan. You might know me as the Bowtie Guy. I've created a life to love after caregiving ends by sharing stories, resources, and being with awesome people like Rich Scharf. Healing Ties is produced in the posh studios of Oddbox Productions in downtown St. Louis, Missouri, and is part of the Whole Care Network. Check out the soft launch of our new Whole Care Network website, and be sure to meet Bo and subscribe to Healing Ties wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We'll see you for another episode of Healing Ties, tomorrow, as we continue our 30 podcast in 30 days to celebrate National Family Caregivers Month. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye for now.
Ciao.
This is WCN, the Whole Care Network. You talk, we listen.